Japan has urged China to resolve a dispute over natural gas reserves in the East China Sea as soon as possible. A foreign ministry official says 5 ministers asked Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao to exert his leadership in the issue. No progress was made, though, as Japanese and Chinese leaders met in Beijing at the weekend for the most comprehensive talks since ties resumed in 1972. I'm joined now by Dariusz Kowalczyk at CFC Seymour, where he is Senior Investment Strategist. Very good day. Thanks for joining us today.
Morning.
Okay, no deal this time around, but yeah, any chance of one in the near future? Did these talks go reasonably well, is your thinking?
I don't think so. In fact, the Japanese were very clear that no progress was made, and they have talked about a dozen times over the past few years. It just seems that stakes are too high, because we are talking about access to potential reserves of natural gas and oil. In terms of oil, 200 billion barrels would be sufficient to meet global demand over the next 7 years. So we are talking about really huge amounts, and the issue is quite contentious. So I really don't think that there will be any solution anytime soon.
The suggestion from China was that why don't we go ahead and explore joint exploration agreements and leave the legal issue, the ownership issue, until later on. Japan didn't seem quite so enthusiastic about that.
Well, the devil lies in details here, because Japan has made a similar offer fairly recently, which was rejected by China. The problem is how each country sees the cooperation in the disputed areas, and in terms of the details, which country gets what within the cooperation, what issues will be subject to it. Clearly, there is a lot of divergence between the views of both partners, and it's not surprising.
So, is this a problem? There's two ways of looking at it. One is this a problem for Japan and China in terms of affecting their economies, and then, again, the bigger one, is it a problem for the world?
Exactly. Both countries really desperately need energy because they import a lot of oil and natural gas. So it would be great for each of them to access energy that is so easily explorable and fairly close to their borders. By delaying joint exploration, they are foregoing this huge economic benefit, which for Japan is probably more important because they import virtually all of their oil and natural gas. As far as the world is concerned, well, of course it would be nice to have more oil coming to the global market, but more importantly, it seems that if they cannot agree on the exploration, there is potential for some political tensions erupting in the area, especially that Japan has already granted exploration rights to one of its companies in the disputed waters. And then China says, well, you guys are violating our sovereignty. And as both countries are building up their military capabilities, there is potential for increasing tensions.
Increasing tension, but are you talking about military clash of some kind here? What are the odds on that happening?
I don't think it's very likely, because it would definitely be disadvantageous for both countries, especially for their economies. However, the situation between Japan and China has been contentious for decades, so a possibility of some small-scale military clash definitely exists, although I don't think that leaders of any of the country would allow that to happen.
Right. The gas talks clearly were the major and the most contentious issue at these talks, but the talks themselves were much more wide-ranging. When Jiabao said afterwards the nations took another step, in his words, in furthering relations, he said especially on trade and commerce, in other words, not on natural gas. But, do you see this relationship warming up? As you say, it has been pretty thorny in the past.
Both parties are trying to warm up their relationship, and the meetings have been the highest level meetings since 1972. So definitely it is a step forward, but in practical terms they haven't agreed on anything meaningful. So it's just to improve the atmosphere of their relationship, but no concrete results yet.
Right, but the economic imperative is very strong, isn't it? China's growing fast. It needs people to buy its produce, particularly if the US slows down. Japan needs growth as well, and it can get it from China. So the imperative for these two to work closely together rather than fight each other, or rather than even ignore each other, is very strong, is it not?
It's definitely in the interest of both to increase their cooperation. The growth of trade between the two parties is very strong. China needs Japanese technology to upgrade its infrastructure. Japan needs China as a market for their exports, as, like you said, the US is slowing down. So definitely they have all kinds of incentives to make sure that the relationship is as smooth as possible.
The joint statement that came out of it also mentioned that China needs to allow its currency to appreciate faster. Now, that wasn't China saying that was a request from Japan for China. Exactly. It made it into the statement. Significant.
I don't think it's very significant. Of course, it's interesting and notable that Japan has joined Europeans and Americans in trying to put the issue of stronger yuan on top of their agenda. But the Chinese, they are politely saying that they are aware of the issue, but they are equally politely saying that pretty much they will not do anything about it in the near future. So I don't think it has any immediate impact on either the currency markets or the trade or economies overall.
Right. Yeah, going back to the economic imperative, I mean, where do you see China at the moment? I mean, a lot of its product goes to the US, and the US economy is clearly slowing. How dramatic that slowdown is remains to be seen. But is there any concern that the Chinese economy is producing so many goods so fast, and yet it may start to run out of customers for them?
I don't think so, because it seems that China is managing to find customers outside of the US. For instance, currently it exports more to the Eurozone than to America. So definitely they are managing to find buyers in other parts of the world. Having said that, definitely a slowdown in imports from the US would marginally limit the growth rate of Chinese exports. Personally, I think that the US economy will continue to grow over 2% this or next year, so I don't think that China will be hit in any major way.
Okay, Dariusz, thank you very much for that. Dariusz Kowalczyk, Chief Investment Strategist at CFC Seymour.